Hey everybody, it's Miss Becca from the library and welcome to the science of potatoes. Today we're going to be learning about what potatoes are, what they can be used for, and what are some of the different cooking methods and chemical reactions that happen when you cook potatoes in different ways. So first off, potatoes are delicious and you can eat them in a plethora of different ways. So they're one of the most versatile foods on the planet and everybody around the world eats them. Most people anyway. They can be baked, they can be fried, they can be boiled and mashed. Their starch can also be used in many other foods. In fact, if you just check the label of some foods you buy at the store, they'll have potato starch listed in many different foods. Thousands of years ago, you could only get potatoes in South America. Eventually, though, they were brought to Europe and spread throughout the rest of the world, and now most of the world eats them in different various forms today. So potatoes are actually, like most plant foods, are mostly water. In fact, they're about 80% water. The rest of it is mostly carbohydrates, about 18% of that. And of those carbohydrates, more than 85% of it is starch. So what is starch? Well, starch is kind of the glue that holds that potato together and it keeps its shape. The chemical reactions that happen when cooking potatoes release the starch to do different things to it so that it takes on different forms. Today we're going to show you a couple of different ways of cooking your potato. We're going to show you what happens to it when you boil the potatoes, and we'll make some yummy mashed potatoes. Then we're going to show you what it looks like when you bake a potato in the oven. And we'll talk about how it's different versus baking it in the microwave, because you can do that too. And we'll even have a really fun dessert to make at the end and a cool science activity that all of our kids are going to love. So I hope you enjoy it, and let's go. While there are thousands of varieties of potatoes, there are three main categories: high starches, medium starches, and low starch potatoes. High starch potatoes, like the russet ones you see here, absorb water and fall apart easily, which makes them the ideal potato for fluffy, light mashed potatoes. They're also perfect for crunchy, salty French fries. Gold potatoes are an example of a medium starch potato. They are great all-purpose potatoes that you can do pretty much anything with. Red potatoes and fingerling potatoes are examples of low-starch potatoes. These potatoes do not hold water well, which makes them perfect for putting into stews or any other type of food which you would like a good, hearty potato. To begin, we're using gold potatoes today, which are those medium starch potatoes that are great for pretty much anything. The first thing we need to do is clean and peel our potatoes, chop them up into about the same size pieces, and get them into a pot to boil. Have you ever looked at the water after potatoes have sat in it for some time, or after they've boiled for a bit? The water usually looks cloudy. That's because the starch has come out of the potatoes and is now in the water. The starch is hydrophilic, meaning it doesn't mix well with the water. In fact, if you let this sit for several hours in a clear bowl, you'd eventually be able to see all the starch that collected down at the bottom. Let's quickly explore what hydrophilic means. Have you ever put cocoa powder in milk? It doesn't mix together easily, does it? That's because it too is hydrophilic. Watch as I submerge some into water. The top layer gets wet, but as soon as I poke it with the toothpick, you can see that everything underneath is still dry. The powder is hydrophobic. It repels water. Let's do the same thing with some cornstarch, which is very similar to potato starch. When I take a spoonful of the starch and submerge it in water, the exact same thing happens. The entire top surface gets soaked, but all of the starch underneath remains completely dry. If you were to take some of the potato starch found at the bottom of the bowl and try this experiment, the exact same thing would happen.
Stay tuned because at the end of this video, we have one more super fun experiment to explore this further. While boiling, the potato carbohydrate granules will begin to dissolve, absorb water, and swell up. This is when the starch begins to release from the potato. This process of swelling and releasing of starch is called gelatinization. Once your potatoes have been boiling for a few minutes, go ahead and take a fork and check for doneness. You want your potatoes to be pretty soft, but not squishy. Once they're at your liking, go ahead and pour off the remaining water. Careful because it's very hot. Then take your masher and give those potatoes a good mash. Some people like to use hand mixers here to make the potatoes a little bit more fluffy. Now add some good old knobs of butter. Don't forget to put in some milk. Mix again to make it creamy. Go ahead and finish it off with some salt, garlic salt if you're fancy, and pepper, and you've got some really delicious mashed potatoes. Now we're going to bake a potato. Potatoes can be baked as a whole in an oven or on a barbecue. The science here is a little bit different from boiling a potato. The heat from the air will take somewhat longer to enter the potato completely. The heat warms up the water inside the potato, and the potato skin acts like a jacket, keeping the water inside. So while it cooks in the oven, the potato is pretty much steaming itself, becoming nice and fluffy on the inside, while allowing that outside skin to be nice and brown and super crispy. So our potato has cooked for about 30 minutes at 450 degrees. It's done, and inside it's nice and soft and fluffy, but look at that crisp outside skin. And did you also know that the skin holds about 50% of the potato's vitamins? Don't forget to eat the skins. Baking potatoes in the oven can certainly take a while, but they're definitely worth the wait. Frying, on the other hand, is usually quite quick. Oil is very good at heat transfer and will quickly cook the potatoes. The higher temperatures and absence of additional water will also allow browning of the outside of the potato while keeping the inside soft. Let's try cooking in the microwave. Baking in the microwave is an ingenious way to cook potatoes. The gelatinization process happens much faster in a microwave because the microwave heats up the water in the potato. And remember, potatoes contain a lot of water. So this hot water will then cook the inside of the potato. Your potato will be done in a matter of minutes. This is much faster than the traditional method of baking in the oven. However, it won't have quite the crispy skin like our other potato did, but it was equally delicious. Don't forget, you can jazz up these potatoes with some salt and pepper, maybe some butter, or maybe even a little sour cream and cheese, and you got yourself a delicious baked potato from the microwave. Yep, you read that right. We're making potato candy from leftover mashed potatoes. Let's start with some of the leftover mashed potatoes from before. These don't have any butter, salt, or pepper in them yet. You also need 1 stick of butter, powdered sugar, vanilla, and some creamy peanut butter. Let's start with a half a cup of those leftover mashed potatoes. Dump those into your bowl. Next, we'll add that 1 stick of melted butter. Now we're going to add 1 cup of powdered sugar, and we're going to use a hand mixer to mix it together. Continue this process. You will need a total of 6, maybe 7 cups of powdered sugar. Yes, you heard that right. That's a lot of sugar. We are making candy after all. You will add 1 cup of sugar at a time while you mix it together. You know it's ready when it forms kind of a dough that isn't too super sticky. Okay, so after adding your 6 cups of flour, go ahead and take some of the dough and see if you can form it into a round ball. If it sticks, then you should have enough sugar. I actually should have added 1 more cup. My dough was still pretty sticky. This is where I would add the 7th cup, especially since we are about to add 2 teaspoons of good vanilla to our candy dough. So it's going to make it a little bit stickier than it already is. So be sure you add that 7th cup of sugar. Mix all of this together, and then we're going to set it into the refrigerator to chill for about 1 hour. After the hour is up, go ahead and take your dough out and form it into a ball. If your dough seems a little hard and cracked, that's okay. It's probably just too cold. Leave it on the counter for about 10 to 15 minutes and then start. And now we're going to take that candy dough and you got it, add more sugar to it. Put lots of powdered sugar on the surface, put some lots of powdered sugar on the top and all around that rolling pin so that you can roll it out into a nice rectangle that's about 1/4 inch thick. Now that our dough is nice and rolled out, we are going to take some of that creamy, delicious peanut butter and spread it all over our dough. Make sure that you keep about 1 inch of a border around the entire rectangle, just so peanut butter doesn't ooze on out. Now we're going to take our dough and roll it into a log. If your dough is too sticky, this part's going to be a little bit challenging. So, like I said earlier, make sure that your dough was not sticky by adding enough powdered sugar to it. Keep on rolling it all the way up, and then we're going to put it into the refrigerator for a little while longer to harden before we slice.
So now we're going to make that solution, the non-Newtonian liquid that we talked about, like the starch does, except we are going to be using cornstarch. Can you show them the cornstarch, Sophia? Mm-hmm. Inside the bowl we have 1.5 cups of cornstarch, but it would work the exact same way with other starch, not just cornstarch. And then we have about 1 cup of water. Yes. We're going to take the water and pour it in the cornstarch and mix it with a stick.
Okay. Wow.
All right, Lena, go ahead and start mixing it. And if you notice, like we talked about with the cocoa powder, it doesn't mix very well right away and it creates lumps. Why is this happening?
Because it forms a liquid.
Because the starch is hydrophobic. It doesn't want to mix with the water easily. Once we get it mixed, it's going to be in the form between a state and a solid. A liquid state and a solid state, excuse me.
This is hard. Yeah.
So you can see in the bowl, this oobleck is in a really liquid state. I'm going to use one finger to show you that when I go in, look how liquidy that is. But my other hand is completely clean, and I'm going to punch, for lack of a better word, the oobleck. and it's going to become a solid state when I hit it with force really quickly. Check this out. Can you hear me hitting that oobleck? Look, my hand's almost completely clean because it never even went into the oobleck. Let's try that again. My fist does not go through. However, look, if I go slowly, it goes right in. And it's all gooey. I can also pick up the oobleck at the bottom and create a solid in my hand. Can you see that? I'm literally holding the oobleck in my hand. It's a solid right now, but the second I let go, there it goes again. Non-Newtonian liquid.